same chapter, Southeast Asia. Two groups, the mainland, which is an extension from the southern part of China, and that's Vietnam, Thailand, Laos. Now, that word Cambodia folk, again, you get some idea how long I've had these notes. That needs to be changed to Myanmar. And Cambodia is not, I mean, it's the same country but a different name. M-Y-A-N-M-A-R. And you have the islands off from this mainland. This region is probably the most complex region on earth, with more than 1,500 languages spoken, and folk, it's really difficult to tell because a lot of times a small group would move from this place to another place a couple thousand miles away, and they eventually developed the language of the people they moved into, but at the same time keep some of their own words. You can try to trace the origin of these people by their language, by their DNA, but their DNA has become so mixed in with others, and basically they're a melting pot. Which reminds me of the United States. The United States was called a melting pot with one huge difference. The people of the United States were all encouraged to speak just one language. These people had more than 1,000 languages. The humans were migrating into this area for millennia. We don't know when the first wave of modern humans came in, but they would travel in valleys. The mountains are very rugged and very steep, so these people would come along, moving, travel in valleys. They have never been unified, and I want to say I don't believe even Alexander the Great could unify them because there are too many islands, and it's difficult to invade an island and then have to turn around and invade another island. The mountains, the steep mountains, keep these people apart. The intense jungle, the word jungle can be called rainforest. That helps keep the people apart also. Civilization has been slow in developing this region. There are a lot of people living in this region that today we call uncivilized. Not so much on the coastline, but you get away from the coastlines and get back into the interior, and you find people practicing such things as head hunting, voodoo, magic, shamanism. Again, it's believed that the immigration came in waves. These people moved about a lot, and some of them, we found out earlier, went all the way to Madagascar. The earliest migration we know about was about 2500 BCE. Don't worry about that. But eventually, 1,000 years later, another wave of immigrants arrived, and we don't know who may have arrived in between. But in the Malay Peninsula is that long, thin peninsula extending down from Vietnam. Merchants came first. They were followed by Buddhist and Hindu missionaries. And a lot of your local people might have recognized the superiority of Indian civilization and wanted to copy it. So Buddhism became dominant in some places, Hinduism dominant in others. Now, eventually Buddhism was to become the dominant religion. Before Buddhism, though, their religion is what we call animism. I mentioned that the other day, animism or shamanism, which animism involves shamanism. Religions that we often associate with primitive people. Animism, shamanism, usually associated with the primitive. Buddhism and Hinduism, again, usually associated with more civilized, more advanced persons. Don't worry about the Kingdom of Funan. We don't know much about it. But it was one of the earlier ones. All we know about it is writings of foreign visitors. It's the first one we know existed. Now, there are rumors that other kingdoms exist in this region. People would come into this region, Southeast Asia, from both India and China, and they would copy the Chinese in a lot of ways. Now let me see if I can, here, folk, this is the region I'm talking about. Right here, extending way down from Thailand, Myanmar, is the Malay Peninsula. And then here is the islands of Indonesia, the islands of the Philippines. We were talking about this region right here, fairly large region, scattered about, separated by thousands of miles of water, and even the islands themselves, the mainland, separated from each other by tall mountains. And again, I doubt that Alexander the Great could have united them, or neither could Genghis Khan. If anyone could have, they probably would have. But this region was simply destined, you might say, to become disunited. All right, Angkor. I want to elaborate on Angkor a little bit. More than 25 years ago, a friend of mine at Lockheed gave me a National Geographic magazine, or article to read, and it described a Western explorer going through the jungles of Cambodia, and all of a sudden stumbling on this really, really large city. The city was crumbling and in ruins. Now, Europeans had heard rumors that there was a city deep in the jungle, but all of a sudden there was a 6-foot black snake slithered on the main street. A tiger peeked its head out of one of the windows and then peeked its head back in. This European went back, he noted where he was, went back, reported it to other Europeans who came and looked at it. And they began to decipher, to try to discern who built this city, when was it built, why was it abandoned. And they finally determined, yeah, it was built by the people living in the region of Cambodia. But they could not hold themselves together. Trade had played a big role in agriculture, but as was the case, folk, and you find many a time throughout history, you have a civilization, and outside you have a bunch of nomadic people you call uncivilized. They struggle for a while, and eventually the uncivilized win. If that doesn't scare those of you who consider yourself civilized, it should. Because this is a pattern that's gone on many times over and over and over again throughout history. The kings of Angkor. Now, what this article said is not in your book, but it said the first kings of Angkor had been Hindu, and under Hinduism they'd been energetic and vibrant. Now again, I don't know what religious convictions any of you have, and I don't need to know. But then their kings became Buddhist, and with all due respect, Buddhism taught them, accept what is, don't try to change, just accept your lot. And they became less and less energetic, less and less, more and more passive, with the result that Buddhism paved the way for them being conquered. Now again, if you want to dispute that, you can. This is what the National Geographic article said. Your book does not repeat that. The inhabitants of Angkor abandoned the city, built another one near Phnom Penh, and it was 400 years after it had been abandoned before Europeans came along and discovered, hey, there was a great city here. 400 years. By that time, now the city is still there, and it's now become like a monument, a national park, and people do visit it. And there's some magnificent temples that are still standing. Some of the structures are considered unsafe, they won't allow you to enter. Structurally unsafe to where they might collapse in on you any time. But it's still there. The Malay world was destined to become Indonesia. And again, when we talk about the Malay world, we're talking about this world. Eventually, now somebody was able to unite a lot of this region here somehow, but they did not unite the Philippines. Well, the Philippines united into a separate country. But But eventually Indonesia was able to unite and has become united to this day. Again, as was the case in the rest of the region, they began with their religion with animism, but then moved to Buddhism and Hinduism. Today, Indonesia is mostly Islamic. Now, Islam had this tradition of unity. They had an idea of universal monarchy, which somehow they never could live up to. Now, again, folk, I think a lot of the problem that India had was they were pacifist. Pacifist, did not believe in war, and this is a shortcut way to war. And the reason I'm so concerned about it is one of my brothers is a pacifist. Has he ever had war in his life? Yes, more than once. That's another issue. Folk, here's where pacifism leads. Just ask any Jew, every Jew knows this. It led to them being thrown alive into burning ovens. And folk, this is standard history until now. And today, the Jewish rabbis will no longer teach pacifism because they did not like them. Obviously, they didn't like the pathway. If you don't stand up for yourself, that's what people will do to you. Anyone want to argue, you're welcome to. If you want to have a different opinion, you're welcome to it. But again, to me, what's wrong with India? Their attitude, there should be no wars. So what happens? War overtakes them all the time. War of the fishes, we've talked about that. The big fish gobble up the little fish. Constantly, over and over again. All right. India influenced the region more than any other country. This I want you to get, even though China also had a strong presence. And because they couldn't unite, they set themselves up to be conquered. Eventually, Indonesia was conquered by the Dutch for a while. The French were to conquer Vietnam. The British were to conquer India. Essentially, European nations, more so than Islam, was to come in, conquer these people, and do a lot, in the long run, do a lot to get these people, you might say, ready for the modern world. The United States, well, first Spain got the Philippines, then the United States got the Philippines. All this is the subject for second semester world history, but nevertheless, that's where it led. Their lack of ability to unify. And a lot of this is because they didn't even speak the same language, didn't have the same philosophy, did not have a common religion, and set themselves up to be conquered. All right. I'll leave that up there for a minute. Speaking of which, the summary, at the end of your chapter is a summary, which it wouldn't hurt for you to read and get some idea of what basically was going on with this region. Okay, so much for India for now. Anybody have any? Well, India and Southeast Asia.